Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Trey, April, Christine, for having me. It's really nice to be able to get up here and speak in front of y'all. I think it's a good time to be able to do this market-wise. A lot of times I get the same questions asked of me over and over and over, whether like I see somebody at a donut shop or it's a builder or a contractor or whoever it is, right? Lumber pricing and availability of products, not only lumber, are top of mind for everybody now. And so to be able to speak on it a little bit is really nice. I would like to make this interactive. You don't need to raise your hand. Just ask a question if you have a question. There'll be lots of questions to be asked. That's usually the way that this works. So feel free to interrupt me at any point and ask a question. That's perfectly okay. Some good information that the public has made known is pricing of lumber, and that's the first thing that we'll get into, right? Whether you go on social media, whether you're watching the evening news, whether you're reading the newspaper, for months you've seen how much lumber has increased, right? It goes up and it goes up and it goes up. Is housing affordable anymore? What's inflation going to do to it? Is there going to be a housing crash? And lately, people have been publicizing numbers and prices per thousand of how much lumber is and where it was. And it is amazing to me when I ask some builders who you would think would be in tune with the price per thousand, and I ask them, do you really know what that means? And they go, why don't you explain it to me first, and then I'll tell you if I know what it means or not, right? So my question in the crowd is, when the news says pricing is at $1,500 a thousand, can anybody explain in the room what 1,000 is, what 1,500 is? Like, how does that relate to lumber at all? Just to gauge the audience. Yes, ma'am. It's per 1,000 board feet, correct. So if I said a 2x12 16 foot is how many board feet? Could anybody answer that one? Not bad. 32, right? So a board foot is length times width times height, right? That is how you calculate board footage. You divide it all by 12 because there's 12 inches in a foot, and then you multiply it by whatever number you're hearing, whether it be 1,500 or 750, and then you come up with a number. So if there's 32 board feet in a 2x12 16 foot, and you're hearing that the price is $1,000, then that 2x12 16 foot should be $32. That makes sense to everybody, kind of, right? So when you hear lumber used to be $400 a thousand, I'm just throwing out numbers, and it got up to $1,400 a thousand, you should be able to relate that to something, right? Whether that be the numbers that they throw out are cumulative numbers. I've given everybody on their seat a copy of Random Lengths. Random Lengths is a benchmark that we use in the industry to be able to buy lumber and in turn sell lumber. So in general, we're not alone. I'm not speaking for Holmes Building Materials. I'm speaking in general. If we want to make 15% on an item, we're always making 15%, and we're buying it for X, we're making 15%, and we're selling it, right? So the amount that we buy it for really dictates what the market is going to be and what y'all as consumers will be paying for it, right? A house typically is made up in a couple of different products of wood. It's not all the same. So you have pine, you have spruce, and you have OSB. That's your three biggest categories that make up a house. And to make math easy, they each equal a third of the house, basically. Spruce is for your studs and your plates. Pine is for all of your load-bearing ceiling joists and rafters, and then OSB is the sheathing that goes on the outside of the walls, right? All three of those things equal about a third of each project, and then they add up to be however much money the house is, right, to cost per frame. So when you hear on the news that the price of lumber is $1,200 a thousand, that is a cumulative number, and it has nothing to do with what the species is, what the grade is. There's lots of more information. The chart that I gave y'all, there's 2 pages. The first page is a lumber market report. The second page is a panel report. As you can read in that lumber market report, the cumulative price you can see that graph. As the graph goes up, the price goes up. Graph goes down, price goes down. It's pretty easy to figure this out, right? So it used to be lumber would fluctuate from $200 or $300 a thousand board feet. Maybe it would go up to $600, $700 in the peak of spring when everybody's getting out and about and doing something, and in the wintertime it would drop back down. Probably nobody in this room realized that you have seasonal fluctuations in it, because it wasn't, we're talking about like pennies on the dollar, maybe something that was $6 goes to $6.75, but nobody really pays attention to it, right? When it goes from $6 to $58, people are going, oh Lord, we can't have this, right? So what has happened is during COVID, the mills run 24 hours a day. And for them to change what they are manufacturing takes a very long time. It's kind of like turning a cruise ship, right? It takes a long time. You don't turn it on a dime. So what happened with the beginning of COVID was everybody thought the market was going to tank. So immediately mills start curtailing production. Well, what happened on the lumber side? Well, the production shouldn't have been curtailed. It grossly rose because people are sitting around their house, they're deciding they don't like their neighbor and they want to build a fence. Or they're deciding they got some remodeling to do, and since they're sitting around their house, they're going to work on that. So the market, it's supply and demand, right? The demand was out there. Well, the supply was going down as demand was going up. Well, when supply figures this out, it takes too long for them to right the ship and then in turn increase that supply. And they have literally been fighting that the entire year of 2020. There was a little blip, if you look at the graph, there was a little blip in November when you thought they had it figured out and prices went down, right? Well, what happens on this is whenever there's a blip, us as a lumber yard, we want to buy low and sell high. That's how you make money. We can only sell a 2x4, 16 foot for so much money. You're not going to pay me $5 more than Lowe's and Home Depot and everybody else in town, right? So we make money if we buy it low and we sell it whenever the market rises. So what happens when the market gets low, we get nervous. We say, ooh, this is the bottom of the market. Let me go out and buy 60 days worth of inventory, 90 days worth of inventory, something to cover my needs. Well, if enough people like us do that, what happens at the mills? There's no wood on the ground. And if there's no wood on the ground at the mills, the price is going to go up because it can. It's openly traded on the open market. The price can rise and fall. It is not as stagnant as a can of beans that you buy at the grocery store that's always going to be 99 cents, right? So you see what happened in the market in November where it fell, everybody bought heavy, and then it started to rise, right? Well, what's happening now is June was about the most expensive time to build, and July happens and prices are falling, and they are falling quick and fast. Honestly, faster than our inventory can keep up with it, right? So right now, we're changing pricing on a weekly basis, not because it's rising too quickly, but because it's falling too quickly. If I'm a builder and I'm looking at starting houses, I would think your August time frame is probably a good time to be able to start houses. Typically, we're holding prices for 30 days, and we're not the only ones that do that. A lot of companies, they just price stuff at the first of the month, and they hold that price for that month, right? The biggest problem right now with your groups of thirds, pine, spruce, and OSB, if you flip to the second page, are your panels. So there's always two graphs. The first graph is lumber, so that's a 2x4 through a 2x12. The second graph is a panel, so it's a sheet good, right? It's OSB, it's plywood. Those numbers, unlike lumber, where it's fallen a little bit in November, December of 2020, those numbers have continued to rise and continue to rise and continue to rise. And if you look at the top left hand of this report, it says the composite price of OSB is $1,567, if everybody sees that, right? Last week, it was $1,673, so it is falling. It is not falling very fast, and it's still very expensive. The most important number to look at is probably the third number in there when it says a year ago, the price of OSB, or the price of panels, was $480. So yes, it is falling, and everybody's excited about it falling, and now the news is picking up that lumber's falling and it's dropping 30 and 40 and 50%. But look where it was a year ago, right? That is a huge, huge difference that everybody, whether you're in real estate, whether you're on a lumberyard, whether you're a builder, whether you're looking at buying a house, whether you need to buy a pre-owned house because now a new one is more expensive than what you were thinking, this affects everybody in this room, right? And the main thing driving this is interest rates, because if you're building a custom house and you're looking at, okay, this house was $300,000 and now it's $336,000. The average price of a house, according to NAHB, is risen $36,000, right? So now the house is $336,000. People are still saying yes because interest rates are so low. And over the life of a 30-year fixed mortgage, they're going to save twice that amount of money if it was a 4% interest rate or a 5% interest rate. So fortunately, the last month, people have started saying no. And I don't know, builders, if y'all have experienced that or not, but they're starting to say, this is just too expensive. This is ridiculous. It's been publicized too much. The price is too expensive. I've got to wait. Well, what happens is when you have multiple people say that I've got to wait, what happens to lumber? It goes down. And it is falling and falling hard and fast. The biggest thing that we're waiting on is new inventory so we can update our numbers, and that's why we're doing it on a weekly basis. And that the price of sheet goods is killing everybody. Where it used to be $9 and now it's 40 or 45 or 50 or whatever the number is, right? So I have a couple of examples I thought y'all would find interesting. Realistically, this is what we paid for lumber in a couple of different time frames, right? So for instance, that same 2x12/16, that is 32 board feet, right? January of last year, what we paid was $12 a piece for that board, right? We probably sold it for $15, $16, we paid $12 for it. The highest that we paid was $60 about 45, 60 days ago. For that same $12 board, we paid $60. Right now, what we're buying is $25. So that's good. It's coming down. Keep in mind, if my price is still $50, that's because I have old inventory in it, right? Like there's only so much money. Lumber is a commodity. Unfortunately, it's not like selling a piece of furniture where we can make 60% on it. That's not going to happen in the lumber world, right? So it doesn't really hurt me to tell you some of these numbers, right? Another good example is OSB. January of 2020, we were buying OSB for $7, probably selling it for $9.99, right? Our highest price OSB that we had to buy was $46, right? And then we have to turn around and make a margin on it and sell it to the public. So we went from $7 to $46. A good example on OSB is there's an OSB mill right outside Alexandria. It produces a tremendous amount of OSB. Royo Martin, it's one of the biggest mills in the country. They run 24 hours a day. It's highly automated. You walk around that place, it looks like a ghost town. There may be 8 people total working in the entire facility. They're all sitting behind computer screens, punching buttons, and machines are doing all the work, right? They're producing as much OSB as they physically can. Why? Because it's so expensive, right? Try owning, a lot of people in this room are business owners, right? Can you imagine, say your over under for OSB is $8, right? So their break even is $8. Well, they are completely out of control of how much money they are going to make. Because when the market bears $7 OSB, they're as efficiently run as possible, and they're losing $1 a sheet every single time a load leaves the yard, right? When the market bears $46 OSB, they physically don't have enough time to take the money to the bank. There's just too much money, right? So imagine being a business owner and not being able to set a price per square foot or $1 per hour, and the more efficiently you run your business, the opportunity and more money you can make. I mean, it's a crazy thought, and OSB mills aren't alone. Lumber mills are exactly the same way. All of these places operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 a year, right? And it is completely out of their control, much like oil and gas that you see now, of the margins that they're making. It's crazy. It's crazy. So the moral of the story is Yes, lumber is coming down. Yes, we're getting some positive news. If you were builders, I would expect either like customers that you lost 30 to 60 days ago are probably either reaching out back to you, or you may want to reach out to them and get updated numbers from whoever you partner with on a commodity basis and say like, hey, there's an opportunity for us to be able to do this. You were $15,000 over on this $400,000 house, the market's come down and maybe you can afford it now, right? While interest rates are still low. I do think this won't last for forever. Everything that we've heard, interest rates drive it. And when interest rates are going to get up into the 4% range, then it's questionable, are we going to have a little bit of a blip, a little bit of a market correction in the downturn? Everything that I've read and I've understood is that's probably at least the end of next year until that happens. And if you can put it in the ground and you can make some money on it, put it in the ground, the market's hot. Lawson will expand on that a little bit. But if you can get in the ground, go ahead and get in the ground, assuming you have some type of an escalation clause for a custom home, or your price per foot on an appraisal can bear whatever your cost is. Yes, sir.
You're more aware of these patterns and such. Do you think they'll ever see 483 again, or will they see like 700 or 800 million for these patterns by at best?
I will be honest, the mills have a lot of pull, right? And there is fewer and fewer domestically owned sawmills that are mom and pops. So if there were 30 sawmills and they're all independently owned, then when we go search for lumber, we're theoretically making 30 phone calls, right? Well, with Canadian tariffs, the Canadians who can run sawmills and run them profitably, right? They've done this for years and years and years, have decided to invest in US-owned sawmills, and they're buying them up, right? So what used to be 30 people competing to sell me lumber could now be 3 or 4. And they're all tweaking those numbers to make sure that everybody's profitable, right? So I don't think, will you ever see $9 OSB again? That's knowing that the mill is losing money at $9, right? I think that's going to be a tough one, you know? Can that market correction bring everything down, everything be 25 to 30% more expensive than it was in January of 2020? I don't think anybody in the room would complain with that. You know, at this point, no one's complaining with 25 or 30% more, and that would be $12 OSB, right? When it's 40 now. So I don't think the bottom is ever going to be as low, because I think they're too smart now and they figured it out. But there's a ways to go, and the more plentiful lumber is when we do decide to buy, because right now I'm waiting to see what the bottom's going to look like, right? If there's enough lumber on the ground, we can't buy it all. So then it does go up slightly, but then it goes back down, and then you get more in a consistent like seasonal pattern and not these huge spikes that you have. Yes, sir.
One of the things that from a commercial side that we're seeing is designers switching back to wood, because we're 10 months away on getting steel delivered to jobs.
Right.
Metal building we're sitting in right now used to be about a 12 to 14 week lead time. That's a 10-month lead time today. So now designers are swapping back to wood. A lot of industry experts think it's coming back down, but it's about to turn back the other way because of the supply. The other thing is the labor shortage of the actual loggers getting the wood to the mill. Can you speak to that?
So honestly, I don't think the price of logs, I think, has little to do with it, and labor shortage for logs. I think this is the mills controlling. If this is a faucet, the mills control the faucet, right? They will buy the logs when they need the logs. They will not buy them when they don't need them, because they need to keep a number where they want to keep it to be profitable, right? I do think, obviously, a Lowe's and a Home Depot, they have thousands of stores across the country, right? And right now, the word is they are really hurting these past 30 days, and they have not been actively buying because the market's been going down, right? Once again, as soon as we figure out what that bottom is, whether that's me figuring it out, whether it's a Lowe's and a Home Depot, an 84 Lumber, a Stein, whoever it is, everybody's purchasing, and yes, I am 100% positive it will go up. The question is there enough still supply to where it just goes up $100 a thousand, $200 a thousand, not another 800 or 900, right? Metal buildings are a tough one, depending on your challenges on like architecturally, what the spans are and things like that. Sometimes wood just isn't in the cards, right? Because you're not going to span as far and you may just have to wait on it. I know steel's gone up tremendously as well. So yes, lumber's gone up, steel has too, and then you may experience a longer lead time with that, you know? Any other question? Oh, I'm sorry.
If this is a stupid question, feel free to say it. That's okay.
No, that's okay.
Look, you mentioned tariffs. So I'm curious if there was anything that, if this could be related specifically to anything regarding federal policy. Was it any, do you think that if we would not have had that change in that office, that this still would happen? Do you think it's just coming no matter what?
So keep in mind the thirds that make up a house, right? So you have a third pine, a third spruce, and a third sheeting. The spruce that we get comes from Canada. For us, it comes on rail car. It takes 30 or 45 days to get, right? I don't know if y'all have looked around. There's lots of pine trees down here. There's not a whole lot of spruce trees. Spruce is a straighter tree. It's straighter wood, so that's why that's why a third of the house comes from Canada, and it's spruce. So if that's a third of the project, so you have a, I don't know, $50,000 framing package, right? So a third of that is going to be spruce. Well, those tariffs only account for about 15% of the adder on spruce. So even if the tariffs go away, it's not going to be some big, huge savings that we incur. And if they go away, by the time they go away, the Canadians will have figured out how to raise the price 15% to account for the tariffs because it's an open market. So that's my opinion. I do think it's kind of humorous. I'm a member of the Home Builders Association. I'm on the board. But when it comes to the National Home Builders Association, the discussions, somebody needs to talk to the president, somebody needs to involve Congress, we need to do something about lumber prices. It is a completely open market. It is a free market. That would be like saying, well, oil was too high back in 2018. I don't want to pay $4 a gallon. Somebody needs to talk to the oil companies, right? Okay, but they're going to charge as much as they can charge, and if you're still buying it, they're going to keep doing it, right? And that's what's happened on the lumber side. So to answer the question, I would love for there to be like a rule and a regulation where you can't sell lumber for over this amount. But I mean, there's a reason why we're in the country that we're at, because it's a free market. And the market will correct itself. At some point, it will have to, right? And it is greatly correcting itself right now. You just have to wait. Just give it a little bit of time to actually trickle into the market. Any other questions? Did I do a good job? We okay with that? Thank you.